So welcome everyone to another Girls in Tech Australia Boss Night, both here and in North Sydney and hello in Digital Land. My name is Karen Katz, affectionately known as Mummy Katz with the Girls in Tech community. Before we commence proceedings, I would like to invite Emma Franklin from Dynatrace to deliver the acknowledgement of country.
Hello everyone, welcome, thank you for coming. So on behalf of Dynatrace, we would like to acknowledge and respect the traditional owners of the land, which is where we stand right now. It's the Cammeraygal people, and I respectfully acknowledge the people who are the traditional custodians. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate you all being here. Enjoy your evening.
So thank you to Emma, and also thank you to Dynatrace, who are not only our hosts for tonight, but have joined us as one of our year-round sponsors. As a not-for-profit, volunteer-led organisation, Girls in Tech Australia can't do what it is that we do without the support of companies like Dynatrace. And so thank you to the team here for believing in what we do and getting behind us. I enjoy the privilege of sitting on the board of Girls in Tech Australia. We are committed to the empowerment, the network building and education of women in STEM. We run a number of events throughout the year, both virtually and in person across Australia. One of our premier events will be held next month, which is our Hacking for Humanity. This year, the charities that we are helping are focused on the home. We'll be running the hack virtually again this year, so it doesn't matter where you are located. You can sign up on Eventbrite and participate. It's a really rewarding event, knowing that you're making a difference to a charity through the use of technology. We donate $2,000 to the Winning Solution charity, which is really good. So tonight we are discussing creativity in tech, utilising everyone in your team for the ultimate success. I'm honoured to be joined by these four amazing people, one of which has already purchased some Girls in Tech swag. I'll let you guess who that is. So they bring a wealth of experience in this area, and they're going to be sharing their stories and insights with us tonight. Carla Rodriguez, wave to the people. Is a multilingual and multinational tech communicator with experiences in 5 continents who brings creativity, inclusion and passion to everything she does. She is passionate about exploring the world, culture, female empowering, dance and Mother Nature. She believes everyone can change their story through education as she did. For the last 10 years, Natalie Barrett. Woo! We've got this. Has been working SaaS in customer success, setting up passionate customer success and post-sales teams. She currently works for Dynatrace as the APAC director for Dynatrace One. Dynatrace One is the customer success arm of the business tasked with continuous enablement and driving adoption and value for customers. Prior to this, Natalie spent time working on yachts in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. It's a hard life. Then in retail and the exhibition and event industry. Talk about PewDiePie. Tim Larkos is the Chief Technology Officer for PwC's Business Align and Connect. His core strengths are around process improvement, business transformation, and revenue generation strategies. He is equipped with a unique technical skill set which enables him to understand and translate in plain talk speak the latest digital technologies. Just between you and me, Tim manages to unearth the most interesting and innovative tech, which he regularly shares on LinkedIn. Take the time to check them out later, you won't be sorry. Nicole Burvis is the head of customer success APAC at Miro. With over 20 years of tech experience, Nicole has held leadership roles across a range of disciplines, including CX, SaaS, customer success, workplace transformation, and business improvement. She is a strategic thinker who can drill into detail as required, driving change via scalable programs. She is committed to bringing people and technology together in both a strategic and operational capacity. Above all, she is passionate about customer experience, transformational change and culture, and is an advocate for STEM diversity. As you can see, I'm in pretty impressive company tonight. So what do we mean when we talk about using creativity in tech and utilising everyone in your team for the ultimate success? If we go back many years, technology was considered anything but creative. We thought of zeros and ones, thousands of lines of code, and large clunky machines. When I was at uni, back in the old days, studying my information technology degree, COBOL was the development language of choice. There was no concept of user experience, and the interface was usually a black screen with square green characters that would eventually give you a headache if you stared at them long enough. Thankfully, technology has evolved substantially, and creativity is now paramount to the success of any technological endeavour. Whilst I could rabbit on about this for hours, you can come along to hear me bangle. I'd like to open by asking each of our panellists to tell us a little bit about their career trajectory and what inspired them to embark on a career in the technology space. And Carla, I'm going to start with you.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Katia Rodriguez, and I have been working in tech for more than 22 years. I know I look young, but I'm not. So yeah, it's so interesting how everything started. My first degree was in primary teaching. So then I decided I love like teaching. I love like bring everything that we have in your heart to your mind and put this outside to the world. And then I decided to study communications and advertisement. And every time when I connect with companies and customers, I work in a customer success as well for 5 years. And I just resigned 6 days ago. So then I was thinking about how we can do that, how we can bring this better. And think about my experience. I changed many times. I'm working in sales, I'm working in customer success, I'm working in marketing, communication, advertisement. But everything like I did, I see like all the time, I bring the creativity to everything what I do. And I was having a lovely chat with one of my friends around here, who just joined the APAC marketing team. And I was talking to him and he asked me, how do you bring the creativity in your day-to-day in the marketing team, for example? And I remember when I'm working in marketing, most of the times we care a lot about our knowledge about the tools. And for me, this is not important because as Karin was saying, if you think about 20 years ago, the tools are different. But one thing is in common is the human connection. So this is why we're here. And more, especially us, if we bring our connection or unique way to see the world, this is the way you can connect with your creativity. One thing I always say to people, you need to find which creative type you have. I think this is the most important thing for anyone who works in marketing, communications, customer success, CIO, CFO, doesn't matter. If you understand about which type of creativity you have, I can help you for free anytime. It's really important. Then you're going to identify your unique style and connecting your team in more deep level, and also connecting to your customers and with your colleagues. Thank you.
Hello there, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I kind of fell into technology, if we're really honest. In 2008, I used to work in the exhibition and events industry. And when the global financial crisis hit, I took a look around. I was in sales at the time, and the budgets for marketing and events had been slashed, literally overnight, just slashed. And I thought, well, what are we going to see in the future here? Are we going to see a complete, no longer face-to-face events, no longer exhibitions? Are we going to move into a technical or a virtual event space? So I looked around, and it took me about 2 years to really understand what the market looked like and the landscape looked like. And I eventually joined a startup organization here in Australia called Redback Conferencing. And we were a virtual events organization. So I naturally fell into what was then SaaS. We had a subscription-based model. We had webinars for the first time. Nobody in Australia had really done that prior to this point. The States was way ahead of us. And we developed what we called a managed webinar program. And from there, I took 5 years with Redback and took them through all of their sort of iterations and into customer success. and then joined another couple of organizations. And there was a bridge for me because moving straight into technology was quite daunting. I needed something physical along the way. So the next company I joined was a company called Fleetmatics. We were acquired by Verizon. And essentially it had a black box that you put into a vehicle and all of the data feeds into a platform. And that was the SaaS platform. The SaaS platform always worked perfectly. The black box never did. So maybe it was the human connection. But from then into Dynatrace, which is totally virtual and totally digital. So I'm finally there. But yeah, thank you.
So when I finished school, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I embarked upon a degree in technology because I think computers were something that we thought might be important. And I received that advice from my dad, maybe you better go and see what you think. And I suppose I still actually have never really come to terms with what I want to be when I grow up. So throughout my career, which is non-traditional, it's quite a messy career path, I've just taken on roles that I've found to be in technology and about bringing people and technology together, and not necessarily a traditional career path. So I suppose the advice that I would give my own kids or other people is, you know, just embrace, if you're not specific about what you want to achieve in your career, embrace opportunities, try something new. The path that you're on doesn't necessarily need to be the path that somebody else has taken. Enjoy what you do. And for me, really a lot of my purpose comes from creating an environment for people to do their best work, and wherever that takes me, you know, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of rich experiences. At the moment, I work at Miro, leading our customer success team for the Asia Pacific region. Miro is a collaborative platform where people can come together and solve problems together, and I'm really enjoying that at the moment. Thank you.
Really, it's not that. It's going to be tight. I'm actually going to take some advice from Burby, because transparently, Burby and I, she doesn't like me calling Burby. Burby and I used to work at PwC, but she's one of my favourite people, so I'm very, very much worth learning from. So I've been in tech for longer than I can. I don't think it might around age, but it's a long time. I'm also going to take some advice from Nicole this evening. So I had a very non-traditional way of entering the tech force. I'm a high school dropout. To those of you, some of you in this room really know that, but actually left school before, just after year 10. I don't really have a school certificate. I think I failed pretty much every subject. Fast forward about 20 years, I was on the board of PwC Service Trust, which is the operating entity that funds the company. So pretty odd transition from where I am, but Karen did say I should be vulnerable this evening, so that's my vulnerability as well. I started out in help desk, believe it or not, rebooting computers. That's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 30 years, to be honest. It's done really well. I'm very good at rebooting computers now. But so I did help desk for a while. I was in software. I did internet service providers. I worked in media and entertainment for a while. So I got to watch all the wonderful Hollywood films before they came out. Every time you watch Game of Thrones, that was actually me stressing in the background, trying to make sure they got delivered on time for the US. I did a little bit of healthcare stuff, and then I've been at PwC. Actually, funny side story, I actually interviewed at Redback and they rejected me. So I don't know if it's her that stole my job. It's a little side story, actually. I was renewing and I did interview at Redback, they didn't want me. So then I joined PwC, had a bunch of different executive roles there, from CIO, one of the divisions. I was appointed as the firm CTO for a while. Obviously, I joined the Film Services Board in the last couple of years, and now I run, or I work as the CTO for a business called Business Align and Connect, to simplify that for you all, and essentially business matchmaker. So think about Tinder for women, not Tinder, maybe let's try Hinge for business. I try to match problems with solutions with technology, so that's pretty much how I spend my day. That's me.
And now you know why I invited him. So, Katya, let's start with you tonight. Can you please tell us, in your opinion, what is creativity in tech?
Wow, this is a big question. So I think we all hear our stories tonight. everyone had a different experience. So we all created our careers, I can see. We didn't actually follow one path. So for me, creativity in tech is extremely important. We're always thinking about how many tools we use every single day. How many ways we can engage with people. We just think like you're talking about the digital people here after the camera, in front of the camera. So this is the way like we can use creativity. We can have the tools, we can have the technology, but to the end, the most important is the connection. So all the time when I'm thinking about a tool, instead of starting rushing learning new tools, because for a creator it's very hard. So I love Miro, by the way. It's a very good collaborative tool to actually connect with others, actually bring the team together. I don't work for Miro, but I actually love it. But for example, UX design, you mentioned, I did a course in UX design and I learned 5 different tools. How are you going to manage that? How are we going to use 5 different tools to create one simple website? It's not that easy. And then you need to finish that, send it with your team, connect with the marketing team, with the backend team, with the architectures and everything. It's very hard. So, and then tomorrow is a new tool comes up. How we can get to this on speed? So step away, breathe. This is what I always do. In thinking about what exactly this tool is solving, what exactly the problem this tool is solving. And then when you step away, I'm going to use Miro as example. So for example, if you think I want to collaborate with my team, I don't have the team, everyone in the same room, for example. And before we used like to write things in a paper notebook or write things on the screens or whatever you want to do. So with you, we use one simple tool that is not simple, but is really good, that you'll be able to connect with different teams. You'll be able to share not only your final actually project, you'll be able to share the process. And the process of creating brainstorming is the most powerful when you want to bring people together. So if you don't have the power, for example, to bring the team together, you can find one to help you there. So for example, let's pretend that you don't have Miro. You can actually use the same thing as a Google Word if you're not afford to buy, to buy the tool. It's exactly the same principle. It's going to be a little bit more challenge because Miro actually uses artificial intelligence to help you with so many different things. But again, you can use a very good tool to help you when you wanted to connect with people. Thinking about creativity, just one thing about video. Everyone knows before we always want to communicate more with photography. That is still really important. But right now, when you buy a Scott, you want to see how this actually feels. And now the way that all the brands are using, it's video. Before it was 10 minutes. Nobody had 10 minutes to watch a video about his cut. So we have a few seconds. How are we going to do that? When you think in the best way to communicate with your audience, you can find the right tool to help you. But if you stay and taking your own time, only thinking about the tool, you're not able to connect and communicate with the teams. So this is what I do with all the works I have been doing for a lot of years. And I learned the tools, but before I think about how these tools can solve a problem for me or can help me to amplify my voice through the tools. Thank you.
So the next question is for Melanie. Why is creativity in tech so important and how have you incorporated it into the formation of your teams?
So technology or creativity in technology is so important because the landscape is changing so rapidly. And that creates an awful lot of questions and problems that we are required to solve. And in the solving of those problems, we're required to create new processes, new services, and new products as a result, which is the creativity. And I thought I might give you an example of what that kind of looks like from my team. So we had a group of customers that were advanced users on our platform. And the enablement that my team specifically were providing was potentially a little prescriptive and a little bit more basic than what they needed. So the team, kind of unbeknownst to me at the time actually, had gone away and looked at what they needed to take them forward to the next step. That they were evolving faster than we were as an enablement organisation. So what the team developed was an immersive, hands-on sort of lab environment that customers could get their hands dirty with the product before they took it to pre-prod or production in their own environment. And that is a really great example of the sort of creativity that goes with that. So, yeah.
Not tapping me, just them. I see what's going on. Tim, do you think that companies place enough importance on using creativity when building and growing teams? And how have you done this with your teams?
I'm going to get in trouble. So short answer is no. I don't think people do creativity right in teams. What have I done specifically? So maybe I'll expand on that. I think as it relates to creativity in teams, it's super important that you have diversity of thought, and creativity is fostered through diversity of thought. So I think the biggest challenge is you need to create a foundation where people can feel comfortable to be creative in themselves, recognising that everyone's an individual and they all have views and perspectives. And then I think that fostering of that environment enables creativity of thought. So do I think that companies in general, I'm not going to speak about PwC, I'm going to speak generally here, all the wonderful companies in the world. I don't think there is enough diversity of thought in the establishment of teams that foster creativity. I think it's more about how well people perform. Do they show up on time? Are they good? Do they have good work ethic? And don't get me wrong, I think they're all really important things, but I don't think they foster creativity. I don't think there's enough emphasis on having a foundation of trust that fosters creativity. And I don't think there's enough focus on the individuals and their contribution in terms of creativity. Some of the best decisions or outcomes, I should say, that we've had or I've had building leadership teams over the years has come from people that you would least expect. In many respects, some of the best hires I've had are people I've hated the most. And I should caveat that by saying there are thousands of billions of people in this world. Not everyone's going to like you. I think that's a fair and established view. And so, I think the conservative view would be say 1 in 10 people hate you. I think that's probably fair to say. Probably met someone that doesn't get on with us. So at any given time, even if I look at PwC, that means probably about 1,000 people hating me every day. So I think the key thing just to remember is, as much as you disagree with people, sometimes the views really send the conversation with direction from creativity perspective. And so, in my experience in terms of developing teams, one of the best things I've done is pick people that aren't naturally aligned to the way that I would think. People that think divergence of thought is probably one of the most important components of establishing teams. So if I look at the leadership teams that I've established over the last few years, and that's almost a decade now at PwC, the best hires and best people I've had in that team have been people that are very different to me. And probably more often not disagree with the approach that I've got. And so I think that probably fosters better creative outcomes. I won't go into too much more detail. Is that fair?
Nicole, what sort of pushback have you faced when bringing creativity into the team selection and building process?
So anybody that's hired me is probably used to hiring somebody that has a non-traditional career path. So I've been quite fortunate that the people that I've worked, that have been my leader, have been people that have embraced diversity of thought. And in fact, one of my leaders was saying, I'm looking for hiring for the future strategic roles that the future strategy for the company, not necessarily the status quo. So a traditional hire may not suit that kind of direction that they were looking at. So I've been quite fortunate to hopefully pay it forward. Where I've had maybe a little bit of pushback is when you're starting a team from scratch. So if it's a new function and you're putting a new group of people into that area, it probably makes sense to hire people that have had experience in that particular role before. And once you've established that foundation, it makes sense then to bring in people that are coming from different areas. In particular with customer success, a relatively new discipline, we are recruiting people that may have had experience in sales or may have come from a support background or potentially consulting or customer support service. All of those different roles can contribute quite unique experiences to the role of customer success. And what I think that builds for us is an environment or a great kind of learning culture where many of the team are potentially quite unique in what they're offering to the team, but also can learn from others in the team. So you're getting a mixture of being able to contribute uniquely and also learn from others, which breeds a really lovely culture of non-competitive behaviour within the team. So I think that's quite important for me.
Some of that was for me, right? So for all of you, and then you can fight over who goes first. During the course of your career, has there been anyone who has said or done anything that changed or influenced your use of creativity in a good or bad way? Who wants to go first?
So yes, absolutely. And I have a very, very vivid memories of the day. Sometime in 2004, sitting in the operations manager's office in the exhibition company that I was working for at the time, complaining to him that the stand that I was supposed to be selling to this large corporate Taiwanese organization was just too expensive. And I remember him looking at me with this really puzzled look on his face. And he turned and he said to me, "Why is that my problem?" And I thought, well, because you've costed it, it's way too costly and all the rest of it. And he said, "Go back and rethink it." And I thought, oh. So I said to him, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, have an understanding of what you're trying to achieve with less input." I said, "Again, I'm not really sure what you mean." So he said, "Oh, I'll spell it out for you." So he said, "What if we were to rent some of these pieces of equipment down here? That would make it cheaper for that particular customer. And if we were to build the internals of this particular element of the stand with the exhibition system that we use to build shelves in." I said, "What if?" He said, "Go back and rethink it." And every time I come across a problem now, or there's a situation I want to provide to my boss, or I always think, am I rethinking it? Am I thinking about it creatively? Do I have an understanding of what the solution should look like? And in this case, the solution was that the customer didn't have the budget for the stand that we had designed for them. Bear in mind, there's a we in there. We had designed the stand that we wanted to sell them. So that's certainly my learning there. Yes.
Great example. So I have a good example actually, and I wasn't the only one from you talking. So when I work for, I used to work for many like famous brands like Adobe, Google, YouTube, Bank, Santander Bank, and everything. I remember one time we actually marketing was talking about metrics, yeah. And it was very hard, like, or one YouTube channel, the metrics was very low and they're not actually impacting any much like what it's doing. And my job was just actually helping how we can improve the metrics. So all the content they were producing was just beautiful. They always hiring like people to actually creating the content. It was just awesome. So I had this branch chasing me like, oh, I don't know if anyone uses like Corset. Well, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, they actually bring the corset to actually the gym. I don't know if you guys remember that. Everyone was using like this type of corset to do workout, and it was actually ridiculous, but everyone was using because the Kardashians was using, so let's do that. So then I had this brilliant idea. It's very hard when you work with someone like me, have like a very creative mind. Sometimes comes a lot of good things, sometimes not. But I just think, I'm gonna say anyway. So I say to them, okay, instead of being girls, why we not do the opposite? Men. So what I did, actually asked them for stand-up comedy guys, very different shapes, and we bring a lot of different sizes for them. And we did the video. It was extremely funny, and the metrics and everything was very high, and we sold a lot of the product. Because like the way they were showing that, the very easy way to say, struggle to close actually that helping like female understand how you can go, not 10 sizes small, just 1 or 2 was really good. And I was very happy with the results of the project. And the grow up to this particular video after 6 months was awesome. And the customer was very happy with the result. Sometimes just bring like a quick, funny idea can help us to achieve your goal with metrics and also bring some quick, funny things for the customers as well. Thank you.
I thought I was going in a very different direction. Because I said about it here, and I might have to wear it. So my one creativity learning, I would say, was probably an interview question I hadn't heard before. Somebody said to me, it wasn't actually aimed at me, it was somebody else who's in the office, and they said, some of you might have heard of this, but let's imagine for a moment you have a refrigerator and you open the door, light turns on, you close the door, light turns off. Someone says to you, how do you know the light turns on when the fridge door closes? Is it always on, or is it actually, when the door closes? And what I find really fascinating about that question is it's the stupidest question I've heard in my life. but aside from that, what I found really interesting about it was the thought process that it kind of triggers from a creativity perspective. So I've asked that question for no other reason than the fun component, because it's a really lovely icebreaker. It doesn't actually answer a meaningful question, but what it does show you is the thought process that people go through in terms of solving a problem. So some of the wonderful responses I've had when you think about creativity, some people have a really simple answer, like they just chop the door off and then just flick the switch. I've had people build cameras. I've had people get forklifts to drive it around and see if the door cracks open while the fridge is moving. I've had people check with maintenance logs. And so I guess the point I'm making is there are so many different ways to solve one problem. And I think just one simple question can completely change the dynamic of how people's thought process goes. So that's probably one. Can I share another one that I thought was really, is that okay? The other one was, I was in a meeting with a bunch of, let's call them, sorry, I need to protect anonymity. Let's call them really important board members. And we were talking about spending millions of dollars on something really important, and everyone was having a bag. We should spend this much money, we should spend this much. Anyway, so I walked out of the meeting and my boss said to me at the time, I'm nameless, he said to me, what did you think about the meeting? And I said, oh, it's great. So Fred was really keen, and Sophie said this, that was really good, and that was all fabulous. And he said to me, what did you see in the meeting? And I said to myself, I don't know what we're talking about. And I saw people and people were talking, and there was a whiteboard, so I don't really know. And one of the things that he reflected with me was when you said that, Sophie leaned in. And when you said that, Fred leaned back a little bit. And when you said that, someone so scratched their head. Now, I didn't think anything of that at the time, but one of the things that I found really fascinating about that is, aside from the fact that I'm clearly not paying enough attention in meetings, because people are observing all of these things about people. One of the things that I really loved about that example was that it taught me that there's more happening in a room from the creativity process, or more that people are thinking than you absolutely realise. And so sometimes I'm in meetings now and I will absolutely pay probably more attention to body language than I ever have in the past. And so that was probably one of my more memorable ones. That between that and the fridge, it's a tough call. It's one of those.
So for me, there was a time that as a project manager, as I was at the time, I was very driven by outcomes. So, here's what the project plan says, we've got to keep on track, really driven by outcomes. And we'd assembled a project team that covered a greater level of diversity than what I'd been used to working with. And there was somebody who I found a little difficult to work with because he would, no, sorry, that's coming up. But just because he was more of a thinker rather than an action-oriented person. And I found it a little kind of hard to understand, you know, how we were contributing in this project. But actually in that project, this was the person that I learned the most from, because this was somebody who had a completely different thought process to myself. Whereas I was full steam ahead, he was a bit more like contemplative, you know, what kind of environment are we creating that literally brings diverse people into the mix, into what we're doing. It was a diversity and inclusion role that this person held. And I learned so much about stopping and pausing and creating an environment that includes everybody that needs to be included in that out of probably majority of my career experiences, this was the one that most surprised me and most helped me grow in terms of how I think about the work. So it comes, I think it's to your point before about diversity of thought. Inspiration comes from unexpected places.
I could actually add to that, the point around body language is the biggest thing that we lose at the moment because of remote working. Now, it's all very well looking at a face on the screen, but I mean, certainly in my experience when working on the recruitment side of my business, being able to see how a person reacts to a question or even the language that they're using without using the language, that is the thing we've lost the most of. So anyway, I'll keep going. To you. What can we do to bring more creativity into our tech teams?
So for me, there's a real strength in being able to articulate the what and the how of any kind of, the what and the why of any kind of project that we're embarking upon. What are we trying to achieve? What's the impact? Why is it important? The context. If we can set that really clearly and succinctly for our teams and give people the chance to look at the how from their own perspective, I think we can encourage people to be more creative in the way they solve problems. So obviously guiding people along the way and checking in to make sure that we're on the same path and that we're clear on what each other's doing. I really think giving people the opportunity to be creative comes from people knowing what's expected to be achieved, and then they can be creative in how they solve it. For me, it starts a little bit with the recruitment process. So when we're looking at a job description or creating a job description, quite often we put a lot of detail in that description, all of these things that we want for somebody to fill that role. There are often people, particularly women, who look at that whole list of requirements in the job description and think, well, if I can't meet all of those, then maybe I should put my hand up to that role. If we can be more disciplined about being more succinct or kind of, you know, really specific around what are the absolute needs of the role, and give people the freedom and have an open mind to what else they can bring to that outside of the role, we may encourage more people to be involved in the process. And I'll just add one more thing. What we are trying to experiment in Miro and some of the work that we do in my team, we're trying to experiment with more creative ways of solving customer problems. So we've got a diverse team, customer success leads itself to that level of diversity. And one of the people in my team, not myself, introduced this idea of a brains trust. So each week we set aside an hour, somebody in the team will bring to the brains trust a customer problem, and we use the diversity in the team to help solve that from different angles. So I think looking towards different kinds of processes and ways of introducing creativity and leveraging each other's strengths can be quite helpful.
Just something Berby said, which I absolutely love. So that point around reading a job description and then only applying for things with tickle, never do that ever. No. Please, that is that is the number one thing that I would I don't think, and just put this into perspective, I don't think I've ever read a job description and said I can do everything on that list ever in my entire life. But in fact, I've probably applied for jobs where I can't do anything on the list. But let's be honest, right? So I've ended up on the board of one of the largest consulting firms in the country, right? So it's done me well, but I think, and it's really, and I want to probably call it out specifically in this forum because there's a number of conversations I've had, particularly there's one person who comes to mind who has recently moved to Deloitte, and she had some conversation with me not 2 months ago. She went through the CV of the job she was applying for. She said, "Oh, but I can't do this. I can't do this." Why do you care? Just apply for the job. She got the job. Just for context, she probably could only do about 2 of the 10 things they asked for. So there's 2 things I take away from that. One is the job description is generally pretty useless. It generally comes down to people like you and whether or not they will trust you and can you trust this person to do the job. And certainly, those are some of the things that I would probably predominantly hire for. But the other is people need to do their job, doing job descriptions, which is such an important point.
It's very true. Less is more. They say that a woman won't apply unless she matches everything, but a man actually will apply if he matches to it, like 2 out of 10. There's actually stats and there is information out there. It's true.
Yeah.
What sort of benefits are we going to be able to see from this influence for creativity?
So interesting questions. So I think the benefits that we'll see out of the sort of creativity is the continuous evolution of technology and fast. And then just on that, you know, creativity and the fast-paced technology often creates uncertainty for people, particularly the human people. But if we're all human, I guess. Well, actually, yeah, maybe. But you know, the ability to creativity really breeds or should breed adaptability and resilience. So if we have creativity in the technology and we have creativity in our workspaces, we create that adaptability and resilience for people to be able to handle the change.
As the CTO of PwC, how can you put focus on creativity when your teams, within your teams and across the wider business?
It's always got questions. It's really good at this kind of stuff. And social recruits. So one of the things I would say that is super important in terms of establishing creative. So look, I think that the number one thing I would share with you all is when you start a role, you need to have the mindset that you are the custodian of that role, and that the role needs to at some point be handed on. So handed on to someone else, I should say. So if I look at my tenure at PwC, I probably had 4 or 5. I lost track. I think lots. And a lot of that is because I've created an environment where the role is set up to be transitioned to the next person. So handing that kind of, to give you a visual, because I'm a visual thinker, I think in pictures, which is probably one of the reasons I go stuff at school. But to give you that vision of somebody handing it back from one to the other, you need to kind of run that leg and hand it back to the next person. And pretty much your role is that handoff and making sure that you get from A to B. So when you think about creativity in the workplace, I think one of the best things you can do is make sure you sprint really, really well as fast as you can to get that progress, and then make sure that that handover of that baton is actually setting that next person up for success so that they can move forward. Too many times I see people take on roles and the roles become about them and them as individuals. And whilst I think it's super important that we as people take away what we need to from that role, never lose sight of the fact that you've got to set up a role for success so that somebody else can grow and take it forward. The moment it becomes about you as an individual, in my experience anyway, the less successful you'll be. The best outcomes I've had is where I look back 3 or 5 or 10 years later and I look at what the role has become, and it's blossomed into something really awesome because of the successes in terms of how the team have worked together to set that up.
Katja, how has your creative background allowed you to bring more creativity to your work and also to your workplace?
I'm going to talk about the workplace first.
we always have meetings. How many meetings we have a day? So many. Exactly like you saying today, it's very hard because most of the meetings we have now is virtual. So, and we have this problem. I think everyone is you work for a small brand or you have your own brand or large brand. Most of the problem we all have like that day you have back-to-back meetings. And I would just say, this is not good. This is not healthy for me. I don't want to do this. So how we can bring this, how I change that? Don't get me wrong, I resigned 8 days ago, so I can tell you guys everything. So what I did between meetings, I always add like water break. This is what I always do for me. Could be water, could be bathroom, could be stretch, because we sit in front of the computer. It's really good to like maintain our posture, make sure you're looking after yourself. Sometimes it's just a quick meditation because I finished with a very challenged customer and I need a break. So I always created this 5 minutes break between meetings. And also I block my calendar. I used to block my calendar for lunch. I deserve to have a good lunch if I work from home, if I work from the office. This is simple things that I do for myself because it's extremely important. How many people have so many issues during lockdowns, during COVID, because we didn't look after ourselves enough. So we need to put ourselves first before everything. The second thing I did, especially with the quick meetings with customers, customers say, again, Katja, another meeting. Some customers are used to work for customer success. I was like the I won the global customer success of the year. And my customers are really demanding. I have used to manage large customers. They want to have a meeting sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, sometimes. What I introduce is ice break and personal questions. So we always ask something important when they start in ice break. I do always bring like something like that, talking about different things. And with the customer, I know like it depends on the level. I know some personal things from them because I dedicate times to listen. And it's so difficult for us right now. We have like 30 minutes meeting with customers or with our colleagues or whatever, and it's just rush, go to the agenda. I think like it's simple, but less is more. This works for tech, this works for meeting, this works for face-to-face. And my last thing, I'm sorry, the last thing I always like to do, so for example, for team meetings, sometimes our meetings are 1 hour. So what we're going to do, so packed agenda. With the ice break, especially thinking about diversity, inclusion, how we bring that, ask about the unique things you did during the weekend, or why you're grateful for your colleague today. So we always introduce these simple things to make our meetings more human, like we're losing this face-to-face interaction. I'm very happy that we're not doing this today. Today we are here face-to-face. Thank you.
What does creative success look like?
Hard questions.
Yeah.
So, in creative success, in my mind, is 2 things. One is having a foundation. I think we talked about it at the start. Having a foundation that fosters a place where people can be comfortable being who they are is probably the number 1 indicator for me of creative success. And that particular point is really important. I do love polls here, KK. I like to do polls. Like polls. How many people, if you just put your hands up, how many people in this room would think that I'm an extrovert? How many would say I'm an ambivert? And how many would say I'm an introvert? So you should have taken a lead from KK. I'm actually the world's biggest introvert. So if you had a scale of like left to right, I would probably be like 18 blocks that way of introversion. So if I could stay away from people on a deserted island, I would absolutely love that, right? So I have to force myself to come out of that bubble and have those conversations and do that to kind of re-index myself in that direction. I'm only able to do that because I've had good coaches, good careers that have fostered recognizing that just who I am is who I am, and that's what I'm going to be. So after I do this, I'll probably stay home for the next 3 weeks and not see anyone. I'll be really, really happy with myself. So I think the first thing is just having a foundation for trust and letting people be who they are. But the second is just ensuring that you really have mechanisms for establishing transparent thoughts without judgment. And what I mean by that is we've all been in meetings before, and a lot of those meetings go something like, hey, what does everyone think? And then the head of the room will say, well, I think we should do this strategically. And the challenge I have with that is if you lead with the lead thought, you never actually hear, because your thought process is being shaped. Like if I'm in a meeting with the CEO and he says, oh, I think we should do this, well, guess what my answer is going to be next, right? Because we're all self-protective to an extent around our careers and our progress and things like that. One of the best components for creative success I've seen is reversing the room. So the person who is the most junior, and junior is determined however you want to determine it, but essentially junior up, you will be very surprised at the different outcomes you get having those meetings. So for me, creative success is those two. One is having a foundation, and the other is having a mechanism to support that foundation of trust. If people can't feel comfortable being who they are, you won't get creativity, and if you don't have a mechanism to support it, you equally won't get it. Tough question. Thank you for the white collar.
So I did some psychological testing in my very first job after I finished uni, and they found out that the 3% of the population was more extroverted than I am. I haven't found them all, but I've been looking. Well, what is the difference in achieving creative success in tech and non-tech environments? Is there a difference?
I don't know that there is from my own experience. I've predominantly worked in technology companies in lots of different roles, from marketing to project management to future ways of working, a whole raft of different things. And I've also owned and operated a sandwich store. And yet in all of those experiences, I still believe in cultural success. So creating a culture where people can be transparent and where people can thrive, in making sure that people are really clear on what we're trying to achieve and why, the context around that, so that we can be creative in how we solve problems. And I think that holds true in my own experience, regardless of what type of industry we're working in. I have a funny example, actually. I was reflecting on, I was working at Telstra running a program called Future Ways of Working, where we were completely changing the work environment for the whole company. So we were putting together new property arrangement, new technology, and new behaviours to work in this environment. And so we were moving through, so we delivered each floor, I think every 2 weeks, and we're moving 200 people at a time into their new work environment. And I was watching one of the team members, one of my colleagues who was a change manager and had previously been a dancer, and he was inducting the next group of 200 people into their new floor. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, how do you do this time after time, the same kind of induction spiel, and yet make it fresh for each new group of people moving in? And he said, you've forgotten, I used to be a dancer. And when I was a dancer, every time we get on stage, we'd be creating a new experience for the people who were seeing us for the first time and striving to make things better every single time. And I just love that. I'd actually forgotten he was a dancer. We're so wrapped up in the world of change that we're working in. And it just shows that people bring, if you're creating a great culture, people can bring all of their experiences from their previous roles into the work that we're doing. I really love that.
Natalie, given your very broad career experience, has it been harder to introduce creativity into a tech team than into a non-tech team?
I'm going to go with a no, but I am going to expand a little bit for you. And I personally think that there's one thing that creativity and technology have in common, and that's it, they're everywhere. Right? So regardless of where you happen to be in whatever industry you are, you're going to come across some sort of technology that's been created for that specific industry. And as an example, in the exhibition and event industry, we used to use 3D rendering software to build our exhibition stands, and then we would take those designs and we would feed them into a computer that would spit out a CNC router, which would basically cut the pieces like a jigsaw puzzle, and then they would go to site and be packed. So all of that technology was designed by developers and people in a technical background for non-technical applications. So I think that it's everywhere, and I would go with no.
That's no more questions, but I'm just wondering whether the audience might like to offer some questions. No, that would be a yes. Excellent. What I'm going to do, if you want to read out your question, just tell me who it's to, and I'll give them the microphone, then I'll get them to read back your question. So, if I'm quiet, I can.
I haven't ever faced a backlash about a creative idea that you had and how that maybe impacted you personally and having bounced back from that or really to.
So the question is, have you ever encountered any backlash when you've been introducing creativity, and what was that like? How do you bounce back from that? Who's up? Got to take her at the end.
So many times. So many times in different roles, in different companies, different countries. Wow, what I always do, cry music. What I always do is just don't think about the person, thinking about what they try to do. And this was years of years, therapy, coaching, mentoring, and everything, because to the end, everyone had a good intention. Sometimes they don't actually accept your idea that moment because budget, or because the team is not actually there yet, or it's the company is not actually inclusive the way it's supposed to be. So, oh, it's just personal thing. The person is a bad day, they think your idea is not good enough. So what I try to do is using like business model to present my ideas. I learned that for so many years because my brain is constantly learning and thinking and creating some new things. So what I do before I speak, I talk to my partner and say, what do you think about this idea? And then what I do, I create like mini business model for my idea. And then I think all the pros and cons before presenting to anyone else, especially to a manager or director or anyone else. Then I create things like that. Or sometimes I talk to my cat. Yeah, your pets can listen to you. They don't answer, but they can listen. And or I think to myself and say, really think. And one thing I learned as well, because I'm super creative in my mind. And sometimes my ideas is not actually 100% good. So if you sleep on and thinking about the next day after, I love coffee, cappuccino. And after the coffee, you really think about the idea you had the day before. If you really continue to think that this is a good one, then you can present. The other thing I do a lot, I have a very good best friend. And in my career, I had so many mentors. It's not called mentor, like people that I trust, that I can share before sharing to the business. And sometimes they say like, my best friend say, Katja, honestly, why are you thinking all that? This is not good. So I think it's good to have these things. But if you have the courage after all your support system, including your pet, if you have, or your partner, if you have, or a best friend, or some colleague that you trust, people that you trust. Because I think when you bring creativity, you need to be vulnerable. And sometimes it's very hard when the person that you're trying to bring your idea does not take on, because it's your idea, you had this. So if you had a support system before present to some leader or some business partner or investor, then you're gonna have like more confidence to bring that. And my last thing is you need to have a quick pitch, elevator pitch, like thinking about your idea. Sometimes you only have a minute or 5. So just very quick example. I used to work for the same company. I used to work for Adobe when I lived in Europe. Then I attended one event and I want to come to Australia. So I had my pitch in mind and I had the opportunity to present it to the president of APAC. Then I had just few minutes and I presented to her and she loved me and hired me to move here. So sometimes you only need to know what you have after talking to people and feel comfortable when you realign with yourself. And I think you'll be fine. If you have any crazy ideas, talk to me, I can listen to you. Thank you.
I just wanted to talk from a slightly different perspective there, where I've actually been the person to shut down an idea, which has been amazing. And how I saw the body language in the room change, and I saw and had to go home and do some long, hard thinking about my leadership style as a result. So we had a group of customers who hadn't installed their units into the vehicles, and they've been customers of Verizon for over a year, and there's problems with the contracts and what have you. And one of my team came to me and said, we need to redo the customer journey. We really need to understand what it is that's stopping them and work back from that. And I don't know whether I was having a bad day or whatever, but whatever they said sort of triggered. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. We just need to get these units installed. Well, we're actually talking the same thing anyway. But when I saw immediately the deflation, like the breath just left the room, and all of these people that have been so keen to talk about how we could do things better and improve it, immediately just shut down. And I looked around the room and I thought, has no one got any other ideas? Or why is anyone going to have any other ideas from that, right? So I went home that night and thought, oh man, what a terrible opportunity I just wasted. Went back the next day, sat the individual down and said, tell me about it. Talk to me about your idea. And as a result of that, we rolled out the process globally. And when we had something like 60% of uninstalled units from the base, within 20 weeks, we were able to reduce that number by half as a result of their particular idea. And so it taught me a really, really valuable lesson.
Hey, I've got one suggestion. I love it when people reject my ideas. It makes money for me. So whenever anyone says, hey, I really don't like that idea, it goes in a tin list. I have a little OneNote on my phone. That's probably worth like $8 billion now. So I reckon it's full of ideas that people hated, that I've subsequently probably turned into side businesses that have more than $1 billion. So what I love about working with companies is if they reject the idea, you have the opportunity to opt for that intellectual property to be yours. So I'm throwing ideas as many times as possible, because as soon as they say no, guess what? I'm going to go and turn them into a little bit. So my feedback to you would be just again, recognise there are 8 billion people as well. Just because there are 3 people in a room that think it's a really crappy idea, put in a list. I guarantee you will find people that think it's a really awesome idea. They're probably just not in the room right now. The number of times, I do this all day, so half my day is looking at really cool technology scale-ups and trying to figure out if they're fit for business. The number of businesses out there that get millions of dollars of funding for the most bizarre things, like metaverse. I mean, I get it. I get everyone's hyped about it. Why are you throwing billions of dollars at that right now? So I think there's market opportunity for metaverse stuff, right? And so the reality is, at some point, that person in the room said, hey, I'd like $10 million for the metaverse, and they were like, yeah, we're dreaming. And then they went to the next room, and guess what? They got $10 million. So my feedback in terms of bouncing, write it down, keep it, and turn it to a millionaire. That's probably my best
Mine's not quite as entrepreneurial as yours. My thing is, probably years ago, when I had that kind of feedback, I probably would have shut myself in a corner and just maybe cried. These days, I think I've learned through others to share. So my advice is, share with those around you. I share with my team when I fail. I work with the most beautiful people that are problem solvers. They help they collaborate. We work for a company that specializes in collaboration. So for us, collaboration is key. retros is key. Getting used to receiving feedback and being comfortable with that feedback is really important to us. And it wasn't natural for me. Like we always say feedback is a gift, but I used to think feedback is a gift when it's positive. These days, I think we're used to more of the retro cycle, and that helps us to become more comfortable with feedback and sharing. So I think that's really changed my life.
I don't think all of them want to answer. It just means that there's less questions. So you had a question for the last one. We'll take this question directed to one person, and then let's do that, and then I'll tell you what's next. Go for it.
The two-parter. Firstly, I find I can't be creative when I'm burnt out. Do you have any tips on that? And secondly, in a workplace that's so focused on the mechanics of working, metrics, getting things done, how do you advocate for bringing the creativity and giving your team space to be able to have that creativity and show it has value?
So firstly, you're absolutely right. You have to take time for yourself, right? And what I tell my team or speak to them about is that, is anyone going to die? And if the answer is no, and the answer is generally no, then it can wait till tomorrow, right? My boss does not expect me to do meetings at 3 o'clock in the morning. I do not expect my team to do the same. And it is, you know, you need to have that ability to be creative while getting the job done. You know, I was reading an article this morning about hybrid workplaces, and the bosses still not trusting the productivity of their teams after 2 years. I mean, what? Seriously, it's been 2 years. We've seen that it works. You know, work is work regardless of where it's done. So, you know, if you want to work from the beach, you work from the beach. No, it's not a problem. But first of all, you have to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. No. That answer your question?
It does. And so how do you advocate for that in a workplace that maybe leadership doesn't have the same thing?
So I don't have that problem at Dynatrace. It's a fantastic organisation, but previously I probably didn't do a great job at certainly advocating for myself at in my previous roles, but I was much better at advocating for my teams. So, you know, set break times, allowing them to take the personal time that they need to, ensuring that we covered them, right, is really important. I used to, at Verizon, we had quite an instance of mental health issues with some of our team based on burnout. And we instigated a meeting once a week where we would come into the office and do a meditation session. It was amazingly helpful, but what we ended up doing was that people felt that they needed to take some time for themselves to do it. So we bought a tablet, downloaded the Headspace app, and let them go into one of the rooms themselves to take some of that time. So we really understood that this is what they needed, some time out to help them.
When I was I was when I first got there, and they had a meditation session for the whole HR department, and then they had to wake me afterwards. I would like you to help me thank these amazing people for their time. If you were enlightened and you would like to tell the world about it, please do so. Feel free to tag Girls in Tech Australia. We're everywhere. Hashtag Girl Boss Night. Pictures in front of a neon sign of courage. They look great. If you wish to follow Mr. Lycos's example, there is a swag table if you'd like to buy some Girls in Tech swag. Don't forget, we've got the hackathon next month. We will be back in town in November in Sydney with another Girl Boss Night. Watch this space for details. We're going to be doing it in Melbourne as well, digital land. And I believe someone wanted another one in Canberra. Doing a bit of that as well. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for watching online. I'm sure some of these people are hanging around. If you'd like to speak to them individually, get asked some questions that you might want to share with the whole room. Have a great night, and thanks again.